In 2021, the entire AI political presence in Washington consisted of one small PAC with $30,000. Today, there are 7 AI PACs controlling $400 million, and not a single law regulating AI has passed. This isn't some kind of conspiracy theory. It's documented in FEC filings. In 24 months, AI went from zero political presence to owning Washington. And here's the part that made me pay attention. Google has hired 130 former DOJ, Department of Justice, FBI, and CIA officials. OpenAI put the former NSA director on their safety board. Why? Well, I'm about to tell you. First, you need to understand what a PAC actually is. PAC stands for Political Action Committee. Picture a funnel where money goes in the top and political influence comes out the bottom. Regular PACs can give $5,000 to a candidate. That's just chump change. But super PACs, they can spend unlimited money. They can't whisper, supposedly, in a candidate's ear, but they can spend $50 million on ads telling voters that their candidates walk on water. You've seen those every political year, every presidential election. We get to listen to, those type of ads, and they're not paid for by the candidates. If you listen closely, they're usually paid for by some kind of PAC or committee. After GPT launched in November 2022, something shifted in Silicon Valley. The tech bros saw the future, and the future contained regulations, laws, oversight, the stuff they'd spent decades avoiding. Their response tells you everything about how they think. They didn't try to build safer AI. They didn't slow down to consider implications. They opened their checkbooks. The tobacco industry, on the other hand, took 40 years to build their political machine. They fought regulations one state at a time, one lawsuit at a time. And big oil, they spent 2 decades constructing their influential network, funding think tanks, placing former executives in government positions. AI looked at all that and said, amateurs. They did it in 24 months. From basically nothing to 7 active PACs. From zero to $400 million in committed funds. From a handful of tech lobbyists to 648 organizations. Who knows how many people are in those organizations? Working the halls of Congress. 648 AI organizations. And the result? Not a single major AI regulation has passed. Not one. They didn't even create their own playbook. They literally hired the same operatives who ran Fairshake, the crypto super PAC. Why reinvent the wheel when you can hire the people that achieve 91% win rate for crypto? The main character in this story is a PAC called Leading the Future. This was just launched a few days ago, August 2025, with $100 million in commitments. But it's the names behind the numbers that tell the real story. Andreessen Horowitz sits at the center like a spider in a web. They're backing Leading the Future. They backed Fairshake. They spent $1.49 million on direct lobbying. When Mark Andreessen moves, Silicon Valley follows. Then there's Greg Brockman, president of OpenAI. Think about that for a second. He's building the AI that might need regulation while also funding the PAC to prevent that regulation. It's like a steel chainsaw ad with a guy with no fingers, being their spokesman. Ron Conway threw his weight behind it too. They call him the godfather of Silicon Valley. When Conway backs something, it's not just money. It's a signal to every startup founder who ever took his cash that they better fall in line. Meta went even further. They created their own California-specific super PAC called Mobilizing Economic Transformation Across California. Yes, it spells meta, without the C. Meta, California. Tens of millions committed. Their target, the 2026 governor's race in California. Governor Newsom is term limited out, so they want to handpick his replacement. But here's what really made my coffee drip this morning. They're not just buying politicians, they're buying the entire ecosystem. The Chamber of Commerce alone hired 81 AI lobbyists. Every major tech firm doubled their lobbying spend. Think tanks that used to worry about AI safety suddenly discovered it's actually perfectly safe, right after the 7-figure donations rolled in. The geographic strategy reads like a military campaign. 4 states targeted for 2026: California, New York, Illinois, and Ohio. And not coincidentally, that's where tech talent lives and where state regulations tend to originate. Control those 4 and you control the regulatory conversation. Now we get to the part that kind of feels like a James Bond movie, but it isn't. Why are all these intelligence officials joining tech companies? The numbers first. Google has hired over 130 former DOJ, FBI, and CIA officials. OpenAI hired the former counsel to Chuck Schumer and a guy who spent 16 years with Lindsey Graham. Then they put General Paul Nakasone, the former director of the NSA, on their safety board. So let me just tell you what I think is happening here. First, there's the national security angle for sure. AI isn't just some fun app anymore. It's critical infrastructure. These companies process more data daily than the NSA collects in a decade. Even old Gordon Gekko knew way back in the 80s that the most valuable commodity to have is information, as he told Bud Fox. Having former officials on staff helps navigate the classified world. They know which AI capabilities can't be exported to China. They understand FISA courts. They can pick up a phone and call their former colleagues when things get complicated. But there's a deeper story. These officials have seen behind the curtain. They know the gap between what AI can do publicly and what it can do in classified settings. They've seen our infrastructure's vulnerabilities. They know what foreign adversaries are really building. The mundane truth is also real. Security clearance takes years to get. These people already have them, whether they're revoked or not, who knows. Tech companies need people who understand export controls, who can navigate the maze of regulations around selling AI to foreign customers. It's boring, but it's essential. And yes, the money matters. Take a retirement, the top GS-15 government employee makes about, say, around $170,000 a year, whereas they go over to Google and they start at $500,000 a year. And here's where the story kind of reaches its climax. All that money, all those lobbyists, all those former officials, what did they achieve? Congress introduced over 150 bills aimed at regulating AI. Everything from requiring safety testing to preventing bias in algorithms to protecting jobs from automation. Some were strong, some were weak, but they all had one thing in common. They didn't get passed. They all died. Every single one of them did not pass. The AI industry achieved something remarkable, a perfect defensive record. Not one major AI regulation has become law at the federal level. That's even better than the Baltimore Ravens smothering defense. Biden tried an executive order, number 14110, which established modest safety testing requirements for the biggest AI models. It lasted 82 days, and then Trump came in and killed it, and really in just a few hours after taking office. It was one of the first things he did. California tried a little bit harder. Senate Bill 1047 would have required safety testing for AI models that cost over $100 million to train. This would only affect the biggest players like OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, etc. The bill had momentum. It had popular support. And then the machine activated. 165 companies registered opposition, 165 of them. Y Combinator, the startup incubator that had never lobbied before, actually hired lobbyists for the first time in its history. Andreessen Horowitz hired their first California lobbyist specifically to fight this bill. The campaign worked. Governor Newsom vetoed it, citing concerns about innovation and competitiveness. The same concerns the lobbyist had been repeating for months. All of a sudden, his language seemed to match theirs, word for word, if you remember. These PACs don't just kill bills after they're introduced. They shape them before they even exist. And so let me explain how that works. If you've ever had to write a factual report, first thing you need to do is research the subject of the report. And where do you get that information? Well, you get it from research papers, web searches, magazine articles, etc. Well, when a congressional staffer sits down to write an AI regulation bill, where do they start? Same places. They read research papers, many from think tanks funded by tech companies. They look at model legislation, often drafted by industry lawyers. They consult with experts who are frequently former regulators now on tech company payrolls. The tech companies have hired a large number of people who used to write these bills. The staffer who spent 5 years drafting tech legislation for Senator Schumer now works for OpenAI. The regulator who understood how to write enforceable safety requirements, Google hired that guy. So the bills that inevitably get introduced aren't bad bills as such that need to be defeated. They're just pre-weakened bills full of exceptions, focused on voluntary compliance, missing enforcement teeth. The public fights that they have in Congress is just theater. The real battle was won in the drafting room before anyone outside the building even knew a bill existed. By the time you and I hear about it on the news, it's already over. So, 24 months, 2 short years, that's all it took. Hey, just one look. That's all it took. Was that a Mazda commercial? I don't remember. The AI industry went from having no political machine to having one of the most powerful in Washington. From one tiny PAC with $30,000 to 7 PACs with $400 million. From a handful of lobbyists to an army of 648 organizations. Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, "Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." The AI industry took this to heart. They didn't fight regulations in public battles. They shaped them in private rooms. They didn't defeat bills on the House floor. They weakened them in the drafting stage. All warfare is based on deception, Sun Tzu wrote. The industry appeared weak, claiming they needed protection from overregulation while deploying $400 million to control the entire regulatory process. They cried about innovation being stifled while building an influence machine that would make defense contractors jealous. When threatened with oversight, they didn't argue their case. They didn't try to prove their products were safe. They bought the referees, like everybody says the Chiefs do, which they do not. Go Chiefs. They hired the regulators. They funded the opposition. They shaped the bills before they were born. The people who used to run America's intelligence agencies now work for Google, more than 130 of them. Former FBI, CIA, DOJ officials who understand how government works from the inside. When they meet with congressional staffers, they're using their expertise for their new employers. It's not really switching sides or, it's not anything that you or I wouldn't do necessarily. It's a career move. From public service to private sector, from $170,000 a year to $500,000 to start. They bring their knowledge, their contacts, and their understanding of how regulations get written, which is why they're hired and what they're paid to do. When a congressional staffer drafts an AI bill, they're taking meetings with former regulators who now work for the companies being regulated. Getting technical advice from people who used to enforce these kinds of laws and now help companies navigate around them. And it works perfectly. Not one major regulation passed, not one law constraining their power. Sun Tzu's greatest principle, the supreme art of war, is to subdue the enemy without fighting. In 24 months, the AI industry subdued the entire regulatory state without losing a single public battle because they made sure the battles never happened. It's the fastest political capture in American history. It's not a conspiracy. It's just the art of war played by Silicon Valley speed with Silicon Valley money. The only question left is, what can't you buy for $400 million? 2 things obviously come to my mind: a good quarterback and Micah Parsons. Well, if you're the Cowboys anyway. I mean, the Packers could, but not the Cowboys. I'll see you in the next episode.